Hello all you beautiful people, and welcome to today's video where we will be discussing the relics that have been announced so far. We'll be looking at the synergies between these relics and going over the choices players can make between these relics. While some of the tiers have been fully released, we don't know everything about these relics yet, so feel free to check back for more updates on my channel once more relics have been released. If you end up enjoying today's video, think about supporting the channel by simply hitting the like button, the subscribe button, or turning on the bell notification icon. And before we get started, let me know what combat style you think you'll be going with this league and which relic you think is the most powerful one that has been spoiled so far. The first tier of relics we'll be going over will be the ones given to us at the beginning of the account. The dev blog has stated your first relic choice will stick with you for the entirety of Trailblazer League. We know the first relics will be permanent in the Trailblazer Reloaded League. I'm very curious to see if we'll be able to swap between relics at any point during this league like we were with the Shattered Relics League. I'm just speculating here, but if we were given the option to swap between relics, I would assume this choice would be given to the player at tier 6 or tier 7. Since the first relic choice is permanent, we should review each one of these and see what benefits they have to offer. The first relic we will go over is the Trickster Relic. I briefly touched on this in my last video, which discussed what leagues are and a general overview of what to expect this upcoming league. So if you are new to leagues, I would suggest checking out that video after this one. The Trickster Relic will give a player a pair of Sage's Greaves that will grant agility experience that scales based on the user's agility level while running. Players wearing the Greaves will earn agility experience at a rate of their level times 0.66 and then divided by 10 roughly every 10 ticks as they run. For players to be eligible to gain experience as they run, the Greaves simply check if the player has moved 2 game squares in 1 tick. Since we have unlimited run energy this league, this will be a way to passively train agility throughout the entirety of leagues. And then for those of you who don't know, there are 100 ticks per minute in RuneScape, so you'll be triggering this experience rate about 10 times per minute as long as you are running. If you pick this relic, you cannot fail actions for Thieving, Agility, Hunter, and Firemaking. Your player will automatically re-pickpocket the target. Looting from pickpocketing is doubled and noted, and the coin pouch limit is multiplied by 3. Box traps lure creatures faster, and loot from box traps is doubled. Impling jars cannot break, and finally you can burn up to 9 logs simultaneously. I'll touch on the thieving synergies we have here. Since you can't fail, you also automatically pickpocket again, and loot from pickpocketing is doubled and noted. So if you love thieving, this will 100% be a relic you might think about picking up. The hunting synergies are also very nice in that we don't fail. Traps attract at a faster rate and you get double loot from those box traps. Also want to note that the Ranger Relic, which we will discuss later, saves ammunition up to a 98% rate, which also includes Chinchampas this league, so this relic might be one you think about picking up if you're planning on taking the Range Relic and using Chins as your source of ammo. The quality of life for the Impling jars not breaking is very nice. I'm assuming players will be able to get the 9 free jars from Elnook still, which means we won't have to worry about making our own Impling jars this league. The second relic in the first tier we will go over is the Endless Harvest Relic. This is a relic that has seen multiple iterations across the leagues we've had in the past, and to be honest, I've taken this one a lot, mostly because I enjoy AFKing. So if you also enjoy AFKing, this might be the relic for you at the beginning of leagues. If you take this relic, all your resources gathered from fishing, woodcutting, and mining will be multiplied by 2. And all resources gathered with this relic selected are sent directly to the player's bank if they have space in their bank. If a player does not have space in their bank, the items will instead be placed into the player's inventory, and items which normally cannot be banked will be placed into your inventory instead, such as clue geodes, clue nests, and clue bottles. This relic is pretty self-explanatory, and the synergies are pretty obvious. Every raw resources you gather from fishing, woodcutting, and mining is doubled, and they are automatically banked, perfect for AFKing. In previous leagues, there was a relic called the Infernal Gathering relic, which would also process the raw resources, which worked great with Endless Harvest. It would auto-cook, smelt bars from the ore you were mining, even if you had no coal, and it would burn the logs you were chopping. While this relic has not been announced yet, I think it's safe to say something like the Infernal Gathering might make an appearance during this league, since we have already seen the Endless Relic. The last relic we will be able to pick from at the beginning of leagues this year will be the Production Prodigy relic. When doing the following activities, all items will be processed at once if you pick this relic: smelting ore, smithing bars, making cannonballs, fletching logs, stringing bows, and cutting bolt tips, cleaning herbs, and making potions that do not have a stackable secondary ingredient, cooking food, making jugs of wine, crafting leather, jewelry, battle staves, pottery, cutting uncut gems, glass blowing, and spinning flax or wool. Full experience is given for the items processed using this relic, and there is a 25% chance that you will make an extra product, which will be sent to your bank if you have space. The additional product will also grant experience as well. Additionally, crafting, smithing, herbalore, fletching, and cooking are all boosted by plus 12 throughout this league. It is important to note that it is currently unclear if the extra product being made is based off of the one tick, or if it's based off of the entire inventory. What I mean by this is if you are cooking an entire inventory of fish, would the effect only trigger based off of you cooking 28 at once, or would it try to populate the 25% chance off of each fish being cooked instead? My current assumption is that it will be based off of the entire inventory at once and not each item being processed in the inventory, but I could be wrong. This relic has a nice synergy with the plus 12 boost to all the processing skills it affects. In all the other previous leagues, it was quite easy to accumulate league points early on by completing tasks and processing raw resources you otherwise wouldn't have the level for. We've already seen some tasks that will be available to us, such as cooking 100 raw sharks. I personally feel that the last relic we have that gave a plus 12 boost fell off late game, so I'm pretty glad to see they've combined aspects of the Production Master and Skilling Prodigy from the last Trailblazer League, so that this relic does not feel underwhelming late game. Now we will review the combat relics we currently know about. A tier has not yet been assigned to them, but from experience these have been the tier 3 relics in the past, and with the Globetrotter relic being teased as a tier 2 relic, we know the combat relics will not be in the second tier. The first one we will be talking about is the Superior Sorcerer relic. In previous leagues, the magic relic has always felt outclassed by the melee and range relic, so let's see if that's the case this time around. If a player picks this relic, magic weapons with an attack speed of 4 or higher will have this speed cut in half rounded down, and magic weapons with an attack speed of 3 or lower will have this speed cut in half rounded up. I do enjoy the fact that the magic weapons will be seeing a tick speed increase with this relic. A player who picks this relic will save 90% of their runes when casting spells and charging powered staves. It is nice to see that they have included charging staves with this relic as well, as that has not always been included in the past. Bind spells will always hit an unfrozen target. This will be amazing for PKing. Not that I personally do any PKing myself, but I can see players picking this for that. Players will acquire the Arcane Grimoire, which will allow players to change between any spellbooks the player has unlocked. The player must be at a bank to obtain this item though. This is a feature that was previous in leagues, and I'm glad to see it's making its return with this relic. Players will automatically acquire a rune pouch. All rune pouches store 2 more types of runes. Magic attacks deal an additional 25% splash damage to surrounding targets, up to 5 additional targets maximum. It is important to note that the splash damage only works in multi-combat areas. Magic accuracy is also increased by 175%, and magic damage is increased by 20%. So we've got a lot to delve into with this relic, and I will say up front that this Mage relic has had the most to offer out of any of the previous Mage relics that you got at the beginning of the game. The fact that we get a rune pouch and they hold 2 more types of runes is absolutely beautiful, and the fact that any spell can be a burst spell in a multi-combat area will be really nice for training. I think the team has done a great job of adding relevant things that subsequently increase the power level of this relic instead of just increasing the power level of the relic through combat damage. I will be interested to see a percentage breakdown of the combat relics again this year, as like I previously stated, melee has always been the dominant one, followed by range then magic, but I could see players picking this relic if they want to truly feel as powerful as the Old Man. The next relic in the combat tier we will be going over is the Brawler's Resolve. In the past, the melee relics have always outshined the other ones, so let's see if that will be the case again this year. If players pick this relic, melee weapons with an attack speed of 4 or higher will have this stat halved or rounded down, and melee weapons with an attack speed of 3 or lower will have this stat halved or rounded up. This has been standard from previous leagues, and it's nice to see this stat making its return this league as well. Nothing feels better than a melee weapon such as the Whip or Zamihasa attacking every 2 ticks instead of every 3. Players that pick this relic will be immune to all status effects, including but not limited to poison, venom, and fire breath, except for stuns and roots. This effect is applied both in PvE and in PvP. This is a nice addition to the melee combat relic this league. Not having to worry about fire pots or an anti-fire shield will be really nice for Slayer tasks, and not having to worry about venom or poison will make some bosses such as Zora a lot easier, and will be useful at various activities in the game such as TOA and Slayer tasks. Players have a 10% chance to deal critical strike damage on a successful melee hit, dealing double damage. Melee accuracy is increased by 50%. Melee, range, and magic defense is also increased by 50%. This relic, like the magic relic, has a lot to offer. There is a lot of utility that subsequently turns into power, which is a great way to boost this relic's power without boosting the raw damage. The melee accuracy being increased by 50% is double from the last Trailblazer League, so I'm going to be very interested to see a breakdown of the DPS at the higher levels. The team has also incorporated a flat 50% defense to all combat styles as opposed to the 15% damage negation they had in the previous Trailblazer League. And the team has added the critical strike damage, which I think will be very interesting as well. While the melee relic has less in terms of the quantity of what is given, I do believe this relic is quite strong on the surface. There are a lot of synergies here for both PvM and PvP, and there are a lot of utility options as well with this relic. If you're on the fence about which combat style to pick, I see nothing wrong with selecting the melee relic, as it appears to be the jack of all trades for the combat relics. The last relic in this tier is the Archer's Embrace. I will be straight up honest with you all, this is the relic I plan on taking unless something else comes out. Nothing gives me more dopamine than throwing knives or using the blowpipe every single tick. Ranged weapons with an attack speed of 4 or higher will have this stat halved rounded down, and ranged weapons with an attack speed of 3 or lower will have this stat halved rounded up. 90% of ammunition is saved when using the ranged weapons. This effect also stacks with Ava's devices, resulting in a 98% ammo saving bonus. Crystal bows, chins, and the toxic blowpipe charges are all included in this effect. This is a really nice addition to the ranged relic this league, as chins used to be excluded from this relic before, so I'm glad to see that it has been added. And as I previously stated, it does have some synergy with the Trickster Relic. Enchanted Bolts have a 2x boosted chance to proc, which will be amazing for bosses and raiding. There's a 10% chance that your weapon will also fire an extra projectile. Bows, crossbows, ballistas, and most thrown weapons are included with this. This addition to the range relic is new this league, and I love this addition. I'll be very intrigued to see if the extra projectile can also trigger if you're firing an Enchanted Bolt. I want to say yes, but we will have to wait and see. Lastly, range accuracy is increased by 100%, and I'm not saying the range relic is the best relic by any means. Typically melee is dominant throughout the leagues, but I will say I'll probably be picking this one because I straight up love the rapid fire effect it has. Now the next relic is the Globetrotter Relic, and we know that this is a tier 2 relic. This relic has been used in previous leagues but by a different name called the Eternal Jeweler. This time players will receive a unique teleport amulet that allows teleporting to a large number of locations from teleport jewelry and spellbooks. It is nice to see they've condensed the teleports to a single piece of jewelry, as in the previous leagues it was spread across several pieces of jewelry. The amulet can only teleport to locations within the regions that a player has unlocked. I'm also interested to see if the player needs the respective spellbooks and magic levels associated with teleporting in order to use the teleports from the amulet. Although I believe the answer to my question is no, at least for the magic level needed. I am interested to see what other relics will be in this tier, as Jagex did state the Crystal of Memories would be making a return, which was also a tier 2 relic in Shattered Leagues, so it might be safe to assume we will see it in tier 2 here as well. If you didn't play in the previous leagues, the Crystal of Memories would teleport a player back to where their last known teleport occurred from. However, this would not work if a player teleported away from an instance or special area such as a quest area and minigames. The next relic we'll be going over is the Undying Retribution. It is currently unknown which tier this relic will be featured in, but based off of the perks here, I would assume tier 5 or higher. Players who pick this relic will instead be instantly revived upon death with full hit points. On death, the player will also deal damage to nearby opponents or opponents in a 5x5 area covered around the player. This damaging effect can be significant. The number given to us was 168 to a nearby Jad boss who initially killed the player. It is important to note that usages or cooldowns are currently unknown. To be honest, I think this might be the most hilarious relic we've seen yet. Imagine if this doesn't have a long cooldown time. Just being able to full send your player to his own demise just to watch him explode on death and be brought back instantly is pretty hilarious. The damage seems substantial as well, so I can see players taking this just because it would make for some great content and would be hilarious to kill multiple players in the wild with this. Another relic we will be looking at that was just announced on November 9th is the Guardian Relic. This relic summons a unique and exceptionally powerful thrall for the player. This relic supposedly has a max hit of 15, can potentially deal area of effect damage, can use all 3 combat styles, and lasts up to 30 minutes at a time. I'm unsure as to what tier this relic will be in. It kind of feels like a mid-tier relic, so maybe 2 or 4. I don't think it's powerful enough for 5, but I could be wrong. I think this will be neat, as I've not had a relic like this before in the past, and I'm interested to see what the cooldown is, or if you can just continually use this relic after every 30 minutes. The last relic we will be discussing is the Banker's Notes, and up until this was announced, I was personally thinking about taking Endless Harvest as I love to AFK, but this relic might make that one irrelevant late game. If players pick this relic, they will receive a unique banknote item that allows players to note and unnote items from the comfort of their own inventory. Noting will note the maximum quantity of the identical item in your inventory, and unnoting will fill all empty inventory spaces with the actual item you are attempting to unnote. It is important to note that we do know if this option will come with a 1, 5, 10, or X option. It doesn't take a genius to figure out this has multiple applications pretty much in every situation throughout RuneScape, whether it's skilling, bossing, or raiding. If you want to camp God Wars for 10 hours, you can bring 2k noted sharks and some noted supersets. Or if you want to AFK Karambwans, you can just note them instead of having to run back to the bank, and you can continue fishing. This seems incredibly powerful, so I'm pretty excited to see what tier relic this will be and what other relics will be offered in this tier. Lastly, we will be going over the passive effects that come with each tier. Now, we don't know which tier these passive effects will be associated with, but since we know what they are, we will at least go over them. There will be boosted experience rates with a base rate of 5x at the beginning. No other rates have yet been announced, but it is safe to assume they could potentially go all the way up to x16 since we have seen that in the past with the other leagues. Run energy will never drain while running. Blue scroll drops as stackable boxes, and to be honest, this is a feature I'd love to see come to the main game as well. It would allow players to stack up all the clues they get from a Slayer task and then do them after instead of having to leave in the middle. Minigame points will have their accumulated total increased from 1x to 3x to 5x, and finally to 8x at some point in the leagues. Slayer points will go from 1x to 5x, and superior rates will go from 1 in 200 to 1 in 50. I'm glad to see these as passive effects instead of relic effects, as they have been relic effects in the previous leagues. And finally, drop rates will increase at a rate of 1x to 2x to 3x to 4x, and finally to 5x at some point during the leagues. And that is everything we know about all the relics currently in their synergies. Let me know what combat style you plan on taking this league and what you think the most powerful relic released so far is. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope this breakdown of the relics has helped you gain some insight. Special shout out to my channel members, Father Duo and Tom. Thank you all so much for continuing to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next update video.